Okay, do y'all see your names highlighted in green up on the screen? Okay, there's a few things that we didn't cover through all of the chapters, and one of them had to deal with the water that we use. So I think we went over this slide with the hand washing stations. Anybody remember this? Okay, so drinkable water is called potable water. It comes from approved public water mains. Don't think about it. Regularly tested and maintained private sources, which could be something like a well. Closed portable water containers. So any type of bottled water that you can buy, whether it's in gallons or the big containers that go onto a machine. And finally, the water transport vehicles. If you're using an on-site septic system, make sure it's properly tested and maintained. Your two choices here are to have a hookup to the public sewage system, where all of your wastewater goes into the city or regional septic, or not septic, but sewage system. Or you can have a septic tank. It's on your property, it's underground. You have to add some chemicals and have it maintained. You only want to have licensed plumbers work on your plumbing. You don't want to try and do your own plumbing repairs. Okay, one thing that we need to talk about is a cross connection. And this is an actual physical link between safe water and dirty water. And it can come from floor drains, your sink drains, from sewers, and other wastewater sources. So there's something that's called backflow. And that's where contaminants from contaminated water can flow through a vessel back into the clean water supply. The way that it can happen in a kitchen is when you have a cross connection. So what we have here is an example of a cross connection. There's a hose leading from the faucet into a bucket of dirty mop water. And if the water pressure decreases, it can start siphoning that dirty water back into the pipes. So that's a very bad thing. Also called back siphonage. There's a couple of ways to prevent this. There's a device called a vacuum breaker that when the water pressure goes down, it closes off the water supply so it won't take in any contaminated water. But the 100% reliable way to keep contaminated water from getting into the safe water supply is called an air gap. So in all of our kitchens, we have a sink, we have an air gap where the faucet is well above the top of the sink. There's no way that we get water going back up into that faucet. And then also at the floor, there's an air gap over a floor drain so that if there's a backup in sewage, it will come out onto the floor. It won't go back up into the sink. And then we never attach a hose to this faucet and put it into a bucket. Okay. One of the things you have to worry about or be concerned about in water and your plumbing is grease buildup in the pipes because we're working in kitchens. There's a lot of grease. This building has grease trap that is outside. It has to be maintained regularly and cleaned out. Also, that's the type of thing has to be installed by a licensed plumber. We're talking about lighting. You have to have certain brightness of lighting. We don't have to remember the numbers anymore. But you typically, your prep areas where you're working with food in the kitchen, that's where you're going to need your brightest light so that you can see if there's any physical contaminants in that. Your lights should have shatter-resistant light bulbs or protective covers. Okay, so typically in a cover like this, there's like a sleeve that's either like acrylic or something that's not going to shatter. In case that light bulb does shatter, it's not going to come in contact with any of your products or the food. Ventilation products or systems, these are the hood systems. Their purpose is to take out the heat, moisture, grease away from your cooking areas. So anything that runs with natural gas has to be under the hood system. And if you don't have a working hood system, you're going to have a buildup of grease and condensation on all the surfaces inside your kitchen. They have to be cleaned and maintained. So what we do in our classes is we're responsible for the filters inside the hoods. We take those out every semester, run those through a dishwasher, put them back in. And then we have a service company come in twice a year, and they handle everything from the ceiling up to above the roof where the exhaust and the return systems are. And then somebody comes in a couple of times a year to polish the exterior of the hoods. Okay. Did we talk about trash and recyclables, outside containers, inside containers? Yeah, okay. So you want to move your trash from your prep areas as quickly as possible. So whenever a trash can fills up, you want to make sure you get it emptied. You don't want to overfill these things because a lot of people are not going to be able to lift it and carry it and then put it into a trash bin outside. Clean the inside and the outside of the garbage containers frequently. So like over on the wall, the size of the trash can that we would have in the kitchen. We have hoses outside that we can hose them out, clean them outside. You don't want to be doing this in your kitchen or your food prep areas. Your indoor containers have to be leak-proof, waterproof, and pest-proof. Have to be material that's easy to clean. Keep them covered when they're not in use, and include a cover for trash cans in a women's restroom. Your storage areas, I think we talked about waste and recyclables. You want to store your recyclables as far away from the building as you possibly can without creating a nuisance to anybody that's nearby. The surface has to be a solid surface. You can't put these trash bins on straight onto the ground. It has to be like a paved surface. And you have to keep the lids closed at all times because you don't want pests getting into it. So they have to have tight fitting lids. At the bottom of the garbage containers, they have a drain plug. Because if something, something bursts inside there when you're throwing in garbage, you get liquid or food on the bottom of the thing. It's not necessarily going to come out whenever they empty the bins. So you're going to have to take a hose all that out, pull out the drain plug, get all that water out of there. But then you have to make sure you put the drain plug back in place so that you don't have rodents going in through the drain plug. Okay. And we did talk about all the little repairs that you got to make in your building. Make sure there's not a way for pests to get into the building. So I'm going to stop here and hand out okay, I want to start reviewing these. I'm going to ask the question. I'd like you to answer the letter of the correct answers. So, number one, the purpose of a food safety management system is to what? C. C is the correct answer. Prevent foodborne illness by controlling risks and hazards. One thing about the exam, the actual exam is not going to group similar questions together like this practice one does. So, number two, a manager's responsibility to actively control risk factors to foodborne illness is called D, active managerial control. Three, a manager asks a chef to continue cooking chicken breasts after seeing them cooked to an incorrect temperature. This is an example of which step in active managerial control. Correct answer is C, corrective action. Number four, manager walks around kitchen every hour to answer questions. See if staff members are following procedures. Which step in active managerial control is this? A, management oversight. Number five, one way for managers to show that they know how to keep food safe is to A, become certified in food safety. Number six, power outage has left hot TCS food out of temperature control for 6 hours. What must be done with the food? D, throw that food away. Number seven, in the event of an imminent health hazard, such as a water supply interruption, the operation must no, it should be C, notify the regulatory authority. If it had like close immediately or stop service immediately, that would be what you do first before notifying the regulatory authority. But you're going to have to choose the best answer that they give you to choose from. Okay, number eight. What is the best way to protect food from deliberate tampering? A, make it as difficult as possible for somebody to tamper with it. 9, again, preventing deliberate contamination of food. The manager should know whom to contact about suspicious activity. Monitor the security of products, keep information related to food security on file, and know D, who is in the facility. Number 10, where should food handlers wash their hands? C, a designated sink for hand washing, never in any of the other sinks. Number 11, what must food handlers do after touching their body or clothing? Number 11, what must people do? I'm looking at the wrong one. The correct answer is washing their hands. So it's A. Number 12, when you are washing hands, what is the minimum time that food handlers should scrub their hands and arms with soap? Quick answer is C, it's 10 seconds. It should be between 10 and 15 seconds. Thirteen, after which table must food handlers wash their hands? It's A, clearing tables. Number 14, what is the main reason for food handlers to avoid scratching their scalps? B, spreading pathogens to the food. 15, when may food handlers wear plain band rings? Okay, yes, okay. You can wear a plain band ring at any time. Number 16, what should a food handler do when working with an infected cut on the finger? Okay, B is the correct answer. Cover that wound with an impermeable bandage or a finger cut and a glove. Number 17, what is the only jewelry that can be worn on the hands or arms while handling food? A, plain band ring. 18, in addition to other criteria, how many people must have the same symptoms in order for a foodborne illness to be considered an outbreak? B, at least 2. Number 19, when should a food handler with a sore throat and fever be excluded from the operation? The answer is A. If you're working in a facility that serves a high-risk population, that means that they shouldn't even come into the building. 20, what is a basic characteristic of a virus? C, it requires a living host in order to grow. 21, after handling raw meat and before handling produce, what should food handlers do with their gloves? B, wash your hands and change the gloves. 22, where should personal items like your coat be stored in an operation? C, in a designated area away from food. 23, what should food handlers do after prepping food and before using the restroom? D, take off their aprons. 24, how should the temperature of a shipment of sour cream be taken when it arrives? It should be D, remove the lid of the container and put the thermometer stem into the sour cream. 25, ice crystals on a frozen food item indicate A, time temperature abuse. 26, what is the most important factor in choosing an approved food supplier? D, it has been inspected and complies with local, state, and federal laws. 27, which item should be rejected? Should be A, anything that comes in torn packaging should be refused. Supplies should be stored away from walls and at least this many inches off the floor. D, 6 inches. Number 29, soup that is being hot held on a buffet should be labeled with the, should be A, with the name of the food. It's out on the buffet and the guests are serving themselves. Number 30, how should chemicals be stored? I'm sorry, B, away from prep areas. 31, what should be done to ready-to-eat TCS food that will be prepped on site and held for longer than 24 hours? A, gate market. 32, what must a manager do with a recalled food item in the operation? C, store the recalled item separately from other food. 33, a recall has been issued for a specific brand of orange juice. Store manager has matched the information from the recall notice to the item, removed it from the inventory, and stored it in a secure location. What should the manager do next? C would be the next thing to do. A food item that is received with an expired use-by date should be A, rejected. Number 35. With approved procedures in place, cold food can be held intentionally without temperature control for how many hours, so long as it does not exceed 70 degrees? C, 6 hours. 36. When delivering food for offsite service, raw poultry must be stored B, separately from ready-to-eat food. Number 37, what is the minimal internal cooking temperature for seafood? You put B? Okay, B is the correct answer, 145 or higher. As long as it's actual seafood, like fillets. If you use ground seafood, it would have to go up to 155. 38, food must be cooled from 135 to what temperature within 2 hours? C, 70 degrees. 39, hot TCS food, being hot held for service must be at what temperature? C is the correct answer. It has to be 135 or higher. 40, which method is a safe way to thaw food? A, is as part of the cooking process. If it's under running water, it has to be no higher than 70 degrees, and it has to be running water. It can't be standing water. And we'll never do that at room temperature. I'm going to stop here and give you a chance to go ahead and do the rest of the 40 questions, and we can go over those on Friday. And then we'll have some other review items to do. Any questions on today? Okay. Anybody miss less than or fewer than 10 questions? Okay, that's a 75%. I'm going to try to get the questions worded in a trickier way. So we're going to really put you to the test. All righty, we'll see you on Friday.